Hey there, Linux enthusiasts. Welcome back to Ton Does Linux and More. I'm your host, and if you're wondering whether this has been just another quiet week in the Linux world, let me tell you right now, you couldn't be more wrong. This past week from June 11th to 22nd, 2025 has been absolutely massive for our beloved open source ecosystem. We've got major kernel updates, brand new distribution releases, desktop environment breakthroughs, and some serious hardware support improvements that are going to change how you think about Linux in 2025. So grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and let's dive into what might just be the biggest Linux news week of the year. Let's kick things off with the heart of our beloved operating system, the Linux kernel. And folks, there's been some serious action in kernel land this week that you absolutely need to know about. First up, Linus Torvalds just dropped Linux 6.16 RC3 on June 22nd, and this release candidate is packed with some fascinating fixes and improvements. Now, you might be thinking, it's just an RC release. What's the big deal? Well, let me tell you why this particular release candidate is worth your attention. The 6.16 RC3 release brings us some late Intel TDX changes that are going to be crucial for virtualization security. But here's something that'll make you chuckle. They actually fixed a bug in the Creative Sound Blaster AWE32 ISA sound card driver. Yes, you heard that right. A sound card from the 1990s was causing modern Linux systems to freeze when used with Pipewire on contemporary desktops. It's moments like these that remind us why Linux's commitment to hardware compatibility is both a blessing and sometimes a source of amusing edge cases. But here's where things get interesting and a bit controversial. The kernel team actually reverted Alienware Gmode key support because, get this, it was actually hurting performance rather than helping it. Sometimes the best optimization is removing code that doesn't work as intended. It's a perfect example of the Linux development philosophy. If it doesn't make things better, it doesn't belong in the kernel. Speaking of Intel, we're seeing continued progress on Intel PMC SSRAM telemetry support for the upcoming Lunar Lake and Panther Lake processors. This is huge for system monitoring and power management on next-generation Intel hardware. The fact that Linux kernel developers are already preparing for hardware that hasn't even hit the market yet shows just how proactive our community is. Now, let's talk about something more serious, security. This week has been particularly active on the security front, and if you're running Linux in production, you need to pay attention. We've seen critical security advisories from Ubuntu, Red Hat, and other major distributions addressing kernel vulnerabilities. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, has issued warnings about active exploitation of Linux kernel privilege escalation vulnerabilities, with federal agencies required to patch by July 8th, 2025. But perhaps the most dramatic kernel news this week involves bcachefs. The advanced copy-on-write file system that many of us have been excited about hit a roadblock when Linus Torvalds rejected the bcachefs pull request for 6.16 RC3. Why? Because it contained new feature code mixed in with bug fixes, which violates the post-merge window rules. It's a reminder that even the most innovative file system technologies have to follow the kernel's strict development discipline. Finally, Intel's linear address space separation (LASS) support continues to make progress in the kernel. While Intel processors are already shipping with LASS support, the Linux kernel implementation is still work in progress, with the V6 patch series released this week. This security feature is going to provide additional protection against certain types of memory-based attacks, and seeing it come to Linux shows our platform's commitment to cutting-edge security. Now let's shift gears and talk about what's been happening in the distribution world, because this week has been absolutely incredible for new releases and major updates that are going to impact how you use Linux day to day. The biggest news in the distribution space has to be the release of Rocky Linux 10.0 on June 11th. This is massive, folks. Rocky Linux 10.0 represents a free, community-driven alternative to Red Hat Enterprise Linux 10, and it's built with the same bug-for-bug compatibility that has made Rocky Linux such a trusted choice for enterprise environments. What makes Rocky Linux 10.0 particularly exciting is that it's running kernel version 6.12.0-55.12.1, which brings all the stability and security improvements you'd expect from an enterprise-grade distribution. The timing is perfect too, coming just about a month after Red Hat Enterprise Linux 10.0 went generally available in May. The Rocky Linux team has really proven their ability to deliver enterprise-quality releases on a predictable schedule. Rocky Linux 10.0 comes in both GNOME and KDE Plasma editions, giving users the flexibility to choose their preferred desktop environment while maintaining that rock-solid enterprise foundation. For system administrators and organizations looking for a stable, long-term platform without the licensing costs of RHEL, this release is going to be a game changer. But enterprise distributions aren't the only exciting releases this week. postmarketOS 25.06 dropped on June 23rd, and this release is absolutely revolutionary for the Linux mobile space. postmarketOS is an Alpine-based distribution specifically designed for mobile devices, and version 25.06 marks the first stable release to use systemd as its init system. The improvements in postmarketOS 25.06 are staggering. We're talking about massive performance improvements thanks to dynamic triple buffering, new fonts that make text more readable on small screens, enhanced notification stacking, and improved window placement algorithms. The mobile experience has been completely overhauled with better task switching, action drawer improvements, and a new traffic monitor in the Wi-Fi settings. What's really exciting is the expanded device support. This release adds compatibility for Google Pixel 3a XL, Motorola Moto G5 Plus, Xiaomi Mi 9T, also known as Redmi K20, Xiaomi Poco X3 NFC, and Xiaomi Mi Pad 5 Pro. The fact that we're seeing Linux distributions actively expanding mobile device support shows that the dream of truly open mobile computing is becoming reality. The distribution releases didn't stop there. We also saw Bluestar Linux 6.15.3, which is an Arch-based distribution that brings the latest packages with a user-friendly approach. Extant OpSUSE 250621 LXQT gives us an OpenSUSE-based system with the lightweight LXQT desktop environment. Tuxedo OS 2250620 continues to show how hardware manufacturers are embracing Linux with their own optimized distributions. And we can't forget about Kali Linux 2025.2, the latest version of the go-to distribution for ethical hacking and cybersecurity analysis. This release brings sustainable improvements to what's already a mature and powerful platform for security professionals. One particularly interesting development this week came from Arch Linux, where the maintainers decided to split KDE Plasma 6.4's Wayland and X11 sessions into separate packages. This might seem like a small change, but it reflects the broader industry trend toward Wayland adoption and gives users more granular control over their desktop environment installation. Now we're getting to what might be the most exciting part of this week's Linux news, the desktop environment and application updates. And leading the charge is something that's going to transform how you interact with your Linux desktop: KDE Plasma 6.4. KDE Plasma 6.4 was officially released on June 17th, and the tagline, "Welcome/Home," perfectly captures what this release is all about, making your Linux desktop feel even more like home. This isn't just an incremental update, it's a comprehensive overhaul that touches nearly every aspect of the desktop experience. Let's start with one of the most game-changing features, flexible tiling. Plasma 6.4 now allows you to choose different tile layouts for each of your virtual desktops. Think about the possibilities here. You could have a 2-window split on your main desktop for productivity work, then switch to a virtual desktop with a completely different tiling arrangement for creative projects. It's the kind of workflow flexibility that power users have been dreaming about. The Spectacle Screenshot and Screen Recording application has received a complete overhaul. Press the Print Screen key and Spectacle opens directly in screenshot mode. You can drag to select a region or press Enter for a full screen capture. But here's the really cool part. You can start annotating immediately with arrows, blur effects, and explanatory text. The quality improvements for WebM screen recordings and fractional scaling support make this a professional-grade tool. KRunner, Plasma's powerful built-in assistant, now has color support that's going to be incredibly useful for designers and developers. Enter any color code, hex notation, CSS names like mint cream or papaya whip, and KRunner will show you exactly what that color looks like and provide equivalent codes in other formats. It's one of those features that seems simple but will save you countless trips to external color picker tools. For users with high-end displays, Plasma 6.4 introduces a brand new HDR calibration wizard in the display and monitor settings. This isn't just about supporting HDR, it's about making sure you get the absolute best visual experience from your hardware. The addition of extended dynamic range support and P010 video color format support shows that KDE is serious about providing professional-grade color management. Accessibility improvements in Plasma 6.4 are substantial and important. The Wayland session now supports moving the pointer using your keyboard's number pad keys and 3-finger touchpad pinch gestures for zooming. These might seem like small features, but they represent KDE's commitment to making Linux accessible to users with different needs and abilities. The visual design improvements are subtle, but impactful. The Breeze Dark theme has been made darker to improve contrast and text readability. When authentication dialogues appear, the background now darkens to help you focus on the password prompt. These are the kinds of thoughtful user experience improvements that make daily computing more pleasant. The notification system has received some fantastic upgrades. File transfer notifications now show speed graphs, giving you a visual representation of transfer progress. When updates are available, you can install them directly from the notification. And here's a feature that anyone who's done video calls will appreciate. When an app tries to access a muted microphone, you'll get a notification reminder. For digital artists and graphic designers, Plasma 6.4 brings significant improvements to stylus and tablet support. Configuring stylus buttons is now much more intuitive. There's an easy reset option if you make mistakes during calibration, and the new relative mode makes your tablet behave more like a regular mouse when you're not creating art. The System Monitor application has been completely overhauled with new overview and history pages that show more useful information. The addition of Intel GPU monitoring and per-process GPU usage tracking for Intel and AMD GPUs gives system administrators and power users unprecedented insight into system performance. Beyond KDE Plasma, this week brought us significant updates to essential Linux applications. Calibre 8.5 improves the Kobo e-reader driver, making it easier to manage your digital library. Darktable 5.2 brings new features for raw image editing that photographers will love. FUUPT 2.0.12 adds support for HP portable USB-C hubs, expanding Linux's already impressive hardware compatibility. For developers, QCreator 17 introduces major changes to project management that streamline the development workflow. These kinds of tooling improvements might not make headlines, but they're crucial for maintaining Linux's position as a premier development platform. Let's dive into the hardware and driver developments that are expanding Linux's compatibility and performance across an ever-growing range of devices. This week has brought some particularly exciting developments that show just how seriously the Linux community takes hardware support. Intel's graphics driver development continues to impress with their proactive approach to Linux support. Intel's open-source software engineers have begun sending new kernel graphics driver feature polls to DRM Next for the upcoming Linux 6.17 merge window. This ongoing development of the Xe graphics driver represents Intel's commitment to providing first-class Linux support for their latest GPU hardware. One of the most interesting hardware support developments this week is the proposed driver for Uniwil manufactured laptops. This new WMI and laptop driver aims to enable battery charge rate limiting, RGB light bar controls, and comprehensive hardware monitoring for Uniwil laptops. What makes this particularly significant is that it demonstrates how Linux hardware support continues to expand into specialized laptop features that were previously Windows exclusive. The battery charge rate limiting feature is especially important for laptop longevity. Being able to set charging limits directly from Linux means you can optimize your battery's lifespan without needing to boot into Windows or use proprietary utilities. It's exactly the kind of hardware integration that makes Linux a more complete desktop operating system. A mobile hardware support story gets even more exciting when we look at postmarketOS 25.06's expanded device compatibility. The addition of support for Google Pixel 3a XL, Motorola Moto G5 Plus, and several Xiaomi devices shows that Linux mobile support is becoming increasingly practical for real-world use. However, it's not all smooth sailing in the hardware support world. The ongoing challenges with NVIDIA drivers continue to be a source of frustration for Linux users. This week saw renewed discussions about shared VRAM handling on Linux, where the NVIDIA Linux driver doesn't handle VRAM sharing with system RAM as effectively as the Windows driver does. It's a reminder that while Linux hardware support has come incredibly far, there are still areas where proprietary driver limitations hold us back. What's encouraging is seeing how the Linux community approaches these challenges. Rather than simply accepting limitations, developers are constantly working on workarounds, alternative drivers, and pressure on hardware manufacturers to provide better Linux support. The fact that we're seeing new laptop drivers, expanded mobile device support, and continued graphics driver development all in the same week shows the momentum behind Linux hardware compatibility. The enterprise hardware support story is equally compelling. Rocky Linux 10.0's release means that enterprise-grade hardware support is now available without the licensing costs of commercial distributions. This is particularly important for organizations that need certified hardware compatibility, but want to maintain control over their software stack. Looking ahead, the Intel LASS support development and the ongoing work on next-generation processor features shows that Linux isn't just keeping up with hardware development. It's often leading the way. The fact that Linux kernel developers are preparing for hardware that hasn't even reached the market yet demonstrates the proactive nature of our community. Now let's take a moment to celebrate what makes Linux truly special, our incredible global community. This week has been particularly rich with community events, milestones, and collaborative projects that showcase the spirit of open source development. One of the most significant community events this week was UN Open Source Week 2025, which ran from June 16th to 20th. This global initiative brought together open source communities from around the world to share their work, explore partnerships, and advance the cause of open source technology in international development. The fact that the United Nations is actively promoting open source collaboration shows how far our movement has come in gaining institutional recognition and support. Linux Fest Northwest 2025 marked a special milestone this week, celebrating 25 years of community, code, and conversations. 10. The Linux Professional Institute's participation in this celebration highlights how educational organizations and certification bodies continue to support Linux skill development. These kinds of long-running community events are the backbone of Linux culture, providing spaces for knowledge sharing, networking, and inspiration. The Open Source Summit North America 2025 continues to serve as an umbrella conference covering key areas like Linux, cloud computing, containers, embedded systems, and artificial intelligence. These large-scale gatherings are crucial for maintaining the connections and collaborations that drive Linux development forward. The upcoming OpenSSF Community Day North America 2025 on June 26th in Denver represents the growing focus on open source security. The Open Source Security Foundation's work is becoming increasingly important as Linux and open source software become more central to critical infrastructure worldwide. At the distribution level, we're seeing continued community engagement through events like the Fedora Docs Hands-On Workshop held on June 21st. These grassroots educational initiatives are what keep Linux distributions vibrant and user-friendly. The fact that community members are volunteering their time to improve documentation and help newcomers contribute shows the generous spirit that defines our ecosystem. Red Hat's Friday 5 weekly blog continues to serve as a bridge between the commercial and community sides of Linux development, highlighting how enterprise involvement can support and enhance community projects rather than competing with them. What's particularly encouraging is seeing how these community events and initiatives translate into real code contributions and project improvements. The collaborative nature of Linux development means that connections made at conferences and workshops often result in bug fixes, new features, and innovative projects that benefit everyone. The global reach of these community activities demonstrates Linux's role as a truly international collaborative project. From UN initiatives to local user groups, from enterprise conferences to grassroots workshops, the Linux community operates at every scale and in every context where technology matters. What a week it's been for Linux! From the kernel developments in 6.16 RC3 to the groundbreaking KDE Plasma 6.4 release. From Rocky Linux 10.0's enterprise-ready stability to postmarketOS 25.06's mobile innovations, we've witnessed some truly transformative developments in the Linux ecosystem. The hardware support improvements, security updates, and community celebrations we've covered today show that Linux in 2025 is stronger, more capable, and more welcoming than ever before. Whether you're a system administrator managing enterprise infrastructure, a developer building the next generation of applications, or an enthusiast exploring the possibilities of open source computing, this week has brought something exciting for everyone. If you found this roundup valuable, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss the latest Linux news and tutorials. Your support helps me continue bringing you comprehensive coverage of everything happening in our amazing open source world. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Which of this week's developments are you most excited about? Are you planning to try KDE Plasma 6.4? Will you be upgrading to Rocky Linux 10.0? Or maybe you're interested in experimenting with postmarketOS on a mobile device? Let me know what you think. And don't forget to share your own Linux experiences and discoveries. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and most importantly, have fun using Linux. This is Ton Does Linux and More, and I'll see you in the next video.